I'm Becky L. McCoy, and you're listening to Stories of Unfolding Grace, the podcast about grace during unexpected times. You'll hear from real people dealing with hard stuff, and I hope you'll feel encouraged that you can bravely live through hard stuff too. Today I'm talking with Andy Hayes, the owner and founder of Plum Deluxe Teas, about the unlikely way that he went from being an IT expert to owning a tea company. I'm here today with Andy Hayes. He's the founder and owner of Plum Deluxe, which is, why don't you share a little bit about the business?
Sure. Well, hello, everyone. It's exciting to be here. I really appreciate it.
And you're my first guy contributor, which is so exciting. I'm so excited about that.
Hooray!
Yay!
That's happened to me once before. It's kind of a theme for me, I guess.
Well, there you go. You're just...
blazing the way with
that's right. Awesome.
Conscious masculine.
Yeah.
So, yes, Plum Deluxe. We're an online community. We talk about mindfulness and gathering and entertaining, but the thing that we sell as a business is tea. We're mostly known for our Tea of the Month Club, but we also have a selection of organic loose leaf teas that we make ourselves. I myself come up with the recipes, and we make everything here in Portland, Oregon, where I am based.
Yeah, and it's awesome because he sent me... You might have seen, so by the time this episode is on, it'll be June, but we're recording it in April. And so I posted on Instagram, I think it was last week or the beginning of this week, about some tea that you sent me, and it was so good, and I love tea. So anyways.
Thank you.
Yes,
It's a pleasure to share.
Yeah. So go buy tea from Andy. All right, so why don't you share a little bit with us about this particularly challenging time?
Well, it's really interesting because, someone who knew me maybe in college or earlier in my career would find it a real shock that I own a successful tea company. It's not, I did not go to school for tea. I'm not actually sure what you go to school for if you're going to start a tea business,
right.
But I did not go down that path. I have 2 degrees, oddly enough, but I started my career in the IT software space.
Okay.
So the technology. I was really into technology as a kid. I would play the games and then try to code the games. And, I really thrived. I had a kind of a passion for that, and I thought it was really exciting. So it probably wasn't a surprise that I ended up in that industry. So when I started my career, I was living in Europe. Mm-hmm. I was based in Amsterdam working for a European company, but my employer was an American company, if that makes any sense. So a European client. And it was fabulous. It was amazing. It was awesome. It was, so much fun. So Europe was just fabulous. It was so much fun. It's just exactly what you picture, this great lifestyle, having 8 weeks of vacation and sipping beers on patios and,
right.
going on these weekend adventures. It was exactly what you picture. It was wonderful.
Okay. And
then my employer was acquired by another company. And my client there in Europe was afraid I would disappear not of my own accord.
Right.
And so they hired me. They gave me the same job as before, but now a different employer, which sounds all really complicated. And it kind of was on a contract basis, but all of a sudden now, instead of being a software guy roaming around in Europe, I was working for a bank.
Okay.
But the same job, and I managed a team of people that were from all around the world, but based in my office, which was just a great opportunity to experience different cultures and meet people from different places. Mm-hmm. But shortly after all this happened, there was the European banking crisis. This is 2006.
Yeah,
a little before that. I think it happened in the United States in 2006, but this was it started there, so it was a little before that. And just overnight, our company did not exist. I mean, literally, it was like the company was part of the Dutch government. So we didn't even know what was going to happen to us. So that was a rather uncertain time. But this is kind of like, looking in hindsight, I laugh because it gets way more uncertain before it gets certain again.
Right.
So what happens is the government splits us up into 3 different pieces, and they get sold to different companies. And so I ended up moving to Scotland. And, I guess I could have had a choice, right? I could have said, you know what, I'm not going. I'm going to fend for myself here. But I chose to go. I chose the path of, like, this job was offered to me. I could go. And I thought, hey, it would be cool. It would be another place to experience. That was really cool. Well, it turns out that Scotland was actually this really dark period of my life. It was really, really bad.
Okay.
This new company that I worked for was filled with aggressive type A personalities. A lot of people who worked there had been acquired from other companies, sort of not of their own accord.
Right.
So there's just a lot of tension and dissatisfaction and kind of resentment of where they ended up. So I ended up in this pool of just kind of negativity. And it sucked. I was so frustrated and so dismayed that I could go from having a job that I love so much to having a job that I disliked so much.
Yeah.
And it was so easy. It just like, whoosh, like it happened.
Right.
It just felt like it just kind of like that, that feeling we think about, that feeling of the rug being pulled out from underneath you. That's really how, when I picture it in my mind, it feels that way.
Yeah.
And me being, the nice guy, the introvert, the, feeling guy, like total tea guy. But this time, right, I'm like totally into the tea lifestyle, right? Like,
right.
I spent many a day in a European tea house. So, So I got bowled over by this whole experience. I had a lot of health issues that were a result. I would just have these migraines that I would almost like pass out all the time. I felt sick and run down. And the thing that I know now was a lot of that was just psychosomatic. Like it was just a reaction to how negative my work experience was. Because when I got out of there, they all stopped like almost overnight. So it's just like a real eye opener that you hear about these things in a blog or some science write up in the Huffington Post. But I lived it, I experienced it, and they can have things that happen to you physically that are a result of your emotional state. So this was like a really difficult place. This feeling like I've ended up literally in a place where I don't know a lot of people. I don't know how to get out. I don't know how to take the next step. I felt so lost because it was kind of one of those things, that old adage about boiling the frog, which is a terrible story, by the way, but the story of where if you turn the temperature up slowly, the frog will not realize that you're boiling it. Right. It's a terrible story. I think it's totally against animal rights or something. But anyway, the moral of the story is things can kind of change, and if you don't really pay attention, you can really find yourself in hot water, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And that's definitely where I found myself.
So how did you said you had all these physical symptoms from the amount of stress you're under in this job in Scotland, where the people are not really not a congenial work environment, you could say.
That's being kind, yes.
Yeah. So how did you react emotionally? What was that like?
I went inward. That was my coping mechanism. I was not very social, unless it was a after work drink.
Right.
I don't know, like a social outlet. I just went in. I watched a lot of movies. At home, alone in my apartment.
Yeah.
I just went in. I didn't talk about it a lot. I kind of laugh when I'm thinking about that. I talk about it a lot more now than ever because I want people to know that it's okay to say how you feel, And at the time, I felt like, almost as if talking about it was kind of exacerbating the issue. The things just
complaining, not like dealing, but
complaining, or I would hear things, And this is the thing, right, that I'm really learned a great deal about, is that you don't need to believe everything that people say.
Right.
And people would say, you're not that, I know that you have a lot of experience, but in this case, it doesn't sound like you're really that smart, or you're not really that good. I'd hear these real put downs, a lot of passive aggressive put downs specifically. And so I kind of started believing them, which is a bad move. And so I just felt like, I didn't have anything to say. Mm-hmm. I didn't have anything to say. So I would just be at home watching, movies where people were getting slashed up or something, just like kind of like this, anything to numb the conscious awareness of the situation.
Right. And what do you feel like you struggled with most during that time?
I struggled with the most was knowing that I could have some control over my own situation. I felt like, and I still feel this way today, I chose eventually, as we now know, to go down my own path and own my own business. But even if I had not done that, I could have control over my situation. Just because someone is your employer does not mean that they are your master, that they are your God, that they are your all supreme decision maker. Mm-hmm. It's your life, and so you need to decide and stand up for what's important to you. Mm-hmm. And in my case, right, there was no... Every case is different, so I don't want anyone listening to feel like, you really need to think about your own situation. But for me, it wasn't like I could go up the chain and find someone to help me or move somewhere else in the company. This was sort of like a systemic thing. Right. So I should have taken ownership of saying, you know what, this is really not the right place for me, and it's a long time for me to go. I need to move on. And instead, I just let it happen to me. Mm. So, and I think I feel like it's kind of like a flow. It's like, if you picture a river, if you start letting it happen to you, you kind of get carried away, and it's hard to then to say, get it back. Yeah, just like, this is not cool. I'm not down with where this is headed. Mm-hmm. Do over. So it takes some strength, emotional strength, to say, I'm going to make a different choice now. Even and it requires, in my case, I felt like it required some kindness on myself, to myself, to say, I think this has gone on long enough. You've suffered. You've been emotionally suffering, and it's enough. Let's make a different choice.
Right. So how did you get from the point of kind of being at the end of yourself in Scotland to running your own organic tea company in Portland?
Yeah, that's literally a long journey, isn't it?
Yeah, and figuratively, both ways.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the first step was realizing that I could trust in myself to own my own decisions, to own my own future. And that was a huge leap forward, but it took a while for that to kind of snap, like kind of a rubber band almost. Mm-hmm. And for me, the things that were the most key were finding people who were in that situation already and getting their support. So specifically for me, there was a group of entrepreneurs living in, it was Edinburgh is where I was living, and there was a group that met every Friday morning for coffee. And they're all entrepreneurs, very successful, creative, fun. They had restaurants, they had consultancies, they had just different things. And it was like at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m, and I'm not a morning person, so this is like really hard. But I just found such a nourishment from that group, and such an acceptance of, people would hear, like, what are you working on, or what are you doing? And I would say, I'm kind of stuck in this, lousy job. And they would immediately turn the conversation around and almost like give me a little coaching. They'd almost...
That's neat.
Yeah, say, okay, well, what would if there was no obstacles, well, what would you be doing, and how would you spend your time? And that was so key. And so I feel like anyone who feels like they're in that position, you have to find people who will provide you that kind of support, that kind of unbiased feedback. It's not about where you've come from. It's, where do you want to get to?
Right.
And how can you be supported in that? So that was really the key for me, was just that constant. And I even changed my working hours so I could go to this thing every week. And it was like every week I would get this additional boost.
Yeah.
Until the point where, I say this and it sounds cliche, but I felt like that's what it was like in my experience. I woke up one morning and said, okay, it's time. I can't do this anymore. I have to move on. And I feel like, when we get into a real pinch like that, it is kind of, you're stuck, and then you finally get past it. You have a really good sleep, you have a really good cry, something breaks, and then you can move forward. And for me, it was this content support network, which was so important. Like, you got to just have people like that in your life. It's just so key.
Yeah.
No matter what. So that's what really released me. And from then on, I just had an incredible series of synchronicities that brought me to Portland, that brought me to tea.
Okay.
Like when I left, I had some cash, so I wasn't too worried. I knew I could kind of survive for a couple of months trying to figure out what I was going to do.
Right.
Because I didn't know, right? I didn't know like what I was.
Yeah. You just knew what you didn't want to do.
Yeah. And there was just not a lot of jobs, and I just knew that this was the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And the big industry in Scotland is tourism, and people knew me in town as this guy who had so much technology experience. I'd worked on really big projects. Mm-hmm. And so I just got swept into these tourism projects where I provided this, consultations on the technology aspects.
Interesting.
And it really was a great timing, because Facebook just launched Facebook pages, which now seem old hat, but businesses didn't have them.
That was new at some point.
That was new at some point, and it was new at the time, so it was a perfect time for me. And I ended up teaching all these workshops to small business owners about technology, like getting your things in order. And one of the interesting things was I was teaching these workshops and talking about, a lot of the technology I had experience with was, software on the web. So I knew a lot about the web, not a lot about the internet. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the focus in these workshops was about websites. How do you sell your hotel rooms online? How do you sell tickets for your tour online? How do you create interesting content? Mm-hmm. And this is all old hat stuff to people now, but at the time it was not. It was something that really wasn't a conversation, especially in a very far away place like the north of Scotland, the north of England kind of thing. So I was doing these workshops, and the thing was, people would say, well, I don't really have a website. And so I ended up partnering with this guy who still works with me today, and we would start doing websites for people.
Wow.
After the workshops. So that turned into a thing of its own, and then the workshops kind of ended. And so here I was doing these websites with this designer, Craig. Hello, Craig, if you're listening.
Yeah.
And so we were doing that. And so now here I am in the kind of web business, which was fine. I liked it, but I didn't love it. It was just kind of like.
It paid the bills, but it wasn't your thing.
Yeah. And I quickly found that I was kind of turning my business into a job. And I was a terrible boss. That was my realization, was I kind of fell into that trap. Like, I got to work 24/7, and I got to be marketing hundreds of things a day, and I got to take on projects that aren't a perfect fit because I never know when the next one will come. And so that was a big lesson early on for me, was, I really needed to spend more time. And I even, this is a process I'm doing, right this second, is spending time regularly thinking about, where do I want to be? Where am I going? What do I know? What do I don't know? Kind of thing.
Yep.
So I was doing the websites, and and then I finally hit this point where I was like, you know what? And I love Scotland, by the way. If anyone listening, Scotland is amazing. Please go visit.
Yeah.
But it was expensive. I had a lot of clients paying in dollars or euros instead of pounds. And so I just found it like a kind of a struggle. And I thought, you know what? I'm done. I can leave here happy that I had this experience, but I'm just not in love with living here.
Yeah.
I didn't even pick here. It picked me. It found me.
Yeah.
And I was born in the United States. This is my birth country, even though my family is German.
Okay.
So I could have, there was kind of some options there, but I just felt like this was a place I should be back to for now. I never know what's going to happen in the future, right? We don't,
right?
Unless someone listening has a crystal ball, but I don't know anyone who has one that works.
Yeah, that would be amazing, but
but so I knew that for right now, this is where I should head back to. Mm-hmm. So I came back over to the Pacific Northwest because it's just a place I love. The odd thing is I was actually in Seattle for a year because I knew a bunch of people here,
okay.
a bunch of people in Seattle, and I'd asked a bunch of advice. I'd finally realized at this point that, I have a huge network of people, so I should ask them for their advice.
Right.
I should ask people who know what their advice is. And I did this guy who's a book author who had lived in both Portland and Seattle. And I said, I know them both, but I'm not really sure, what I should do. And he said, move to Seattle and then you'll move into Portland. That's what everyone does. And that's what you'll do. And I said, okay. And that's what I did. So I lived in Seattle for like 1 year, and I was like, he's right. I should have moved to Portland.
Yeah.
But it just worked out totally fine. Like, from the direct flight to the people that I met, etc. So the thing was, right, is when I had started my business, I had always, as a kid, felt like I wanted to be a writer. That was kind of my dream. I cut up like pieces of paper and staple them and make like books and write the books and draw the illustrations. And so when I was teaching these workshops to people about their websites, and I was always saying, a blog is great, especially in tourism. You can highlight stories of customers and the things that you visit and help people, get a preview of what they're going to experience. So I had my own blog, and it was at first on my website, and then it became a different website, and then it became Plum Deluxe.
Okay.
And this blog, the question that it was trying to answer the whole time in the beginning was, why are we better versions of ourselves when we're on vacation?
Interesting.
Okay. This was my take on travel, right? This is what I was trying to talk about. So I was really kind of in that travel's cool, and food and all that, but the kind of the mindfulness piece behind it, I was really curious. I have a very curious mind. So that's what was driving me. And all of this time, this is a blog. I've been blogging. It's really built up this audience. And I thought, this is where I really like to be. This is what I love to do.
Yeah.
It's really, it gives me energy, more than I put into it. So, but it doesn't make me money, it doesn't provide for me. So now I'm finally at the point where I'm like, okay, I need to wind down some of these activities and make this thing work. And I had done like sponsorships and advertising and a few different things, and none of them really had taken off. But people kept saying to me that if I'd made something, they would buy it. And I was like, I don't really know what that means,
Yeah. You can't just pull it out of thin air.
Yeah. I was like, what does that mean? I guess I didn't even think at the time they meant literally, like make something and we'll buy it. So here I am in Portland, the vegetarian, organic, natural biking, outdoorsy place that you picture it to be. And I was just like, like if we had a product, like what would it be? And it just dawned on me that it was so obvious that I missed it. It was like tea. I'm such a tea lifestyle person. And what I liked about the tea was I could put my stamp on it. Like the teas that we make are very unique, and we can make something that nobody else has made. It really fits in with this whole lifestyle of, how do we be better versions of ourselves? How do we slow down? How do we... And it kind of, I felt like in retrospect, was something that mirrored my own experience, in that if I could have slowed down and created more space in my difficult periods of life, I might have found it easier to get through them. So it was just felt like a natural fit. And it's something that took off the second that I started. So that was a wonderful kind of affirmation of my efforts. So I still have a few little things here and there that I continue to do as I build that. But, just looking back and thinking about all these different experiences, these difficult times are what brought me the knowledge, the emotional strength, the awareness, the conscious awareness, the empowerment to have a business like this. I don't feel like if I had quit that job that I could have started something like this. I just wouldn't have felt capable.
I get so excited to see people choosing to live bravely and authentically. Each week on Tuesdays and Fridays, I host a Facebook Live event to share more stories of people living bravely, and I want to hear your story too. Join us at facebook.com/Becky L. McCoy. I can only share so much with you here on the podcast, but you can read my story and learn more about living bravely and authentically at my blog, BeckyLMcCoy.com. Stop by and sign up to receive my monthly newsletter. It includes book recommendations and blog posts and podcast episodes you may have missed. Check the show notes for details. Okay, so I'm using this definition of grace as good things that happen during hard times. So when you look back on those days in Scotland when you're stuck in this job you don't love or even like, what were the good things that happened? How did you see grace?
Well, the main one we've been skirting around is this development of emotional awareness, a development of knowing that I am capable. Mm-hmm. I am empowered.
Yep.
I get to choose. And I will be fine even if I choose wrong. Mm-hmm. And if we were on a TV show, I would be air quoting wrong because that's, I feel like,
right.
open definition of that.
Yeah, if you make a wrong decision, you just make a different decision. Like, you just change it. It's not like everything is over. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
The other half of it, too, I feel like was just getting more in touch with me as a person moving in the world. Mm-hmm. I found my identity, and I feel like as a cog in a wheel in these big companies, I was just kind of this person who was very smart and talented, someone that people wanted to work for, but it was all surrounded by my title, my job role.
Right.
Like it was just so sucked up into that. And drifting away from that allowed me to really find my voice as a person who stands up for mindfulness, who stands up for connecting with other people, one-on-one or around the dinner table. It really helped me to build that so that even if my tea company goes away, I still know who I am and what I stand for. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have that before. I was just trapped in this whole identity that somebody else gave to me.
Right. Yeah. I'm always, as I'm getting to know new people, I'm always like, well, what's your Myers-Briggs? What's your Strengths Finder? What are all these different things so I can figure out who you are? Because as I figured out who I am, I just can live so much more confidently in knowing what my strengths and weaknesses are. And
yes. Well, I am an IFNP, and then Enneagram 469, which is a seeker.
Okay. Oh, I always forget my Enneagram.
I think
I'm a 7, and I don't have a wing. That's what it is.
That
was really interesting, and I'm an INFJ.
Yeah, I always found the Enneagram, I couldn't really, I didn't feel a connection with it. And then someone told me about taking it where you get the bigger number, like the additional digits. And then I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Everyone needs to take this. So if you are like Enneagram, that sucks. Take the one where you get the more detail. You get, like,
I did the more detailed one, and it was like, nope, you're just a 7. Like, oh, okay.
Well,
great.
It means you live a simple life, I guess.
I don't know. I don't know what it means. It means something, I guess. So how, as a result of all of this and all this change you've experienced, do you feel like you've decided to live more bravely and authentically?
Yes. I do not hesitate anymore to take risks, to say and speak from the heart. That doesn't mean I jump out in front of cars or blurt things out that I might regret. I definitely speak slowly and thoughtfully. But if I feel as though something is the right choice, even if it seems a little crazy, I go for it, because I know that if it doesn't work out, I'll definitely learn a lot. And if it does work out, I'll learn a lot and I'll really enjoy it. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it, that you didn't kind of swing all the way to the other side, and you're not this crazy impulsive person now, but you can just kind of confidently take risks and do new things without being paralyzed by the fear. That's right. And I also feel part of being brave and authentic, let's see how you put it, is your feet are really on the ground. There's kind of a sense of groundedness to me when we have that phrase, because for me, it's like you're kind of really just, you're in touch, you're in the moment, you're here. Yep. You're not back, replaying old stuff. Like, that's behind you. Yep. You need to, I've kind of really shed a lot of that history, a lot of that shadow, and I'm here right now with you. And that's where people need to be. And if you are here right now, then you can hear very clearly, you can see very clearly what the next step is. So I think that's what drives that. Yeah. And you touched on this a little bit, but if someone was in a job that that was just such a bad fit, how would you encourage them to handle that situation? Well, I say take a deep breath for one, right? If this stuff happens. And then I would create some space. This is what I did, and I feel like if you are really in a bind, and the more of a bind you're in, the more space you really need it. And when I say create space, that could be, if you have kids, getting them to bed early and you have a couple of hours with no TV, just sitting down with, your cup of tea and just really thinking about, like, what your options are, or if anything could happen to you, like, what would be the best thing. That could also be, I changed my hours. I ended up working like 4 days a week, but longer, so I could have a whole day off. And I use that to just plan. So if you are stuck in a job that's just not cool, it's okay. Take a breath and then find some space to really think about, if I could take that job away from you, I would. But what would you replace it with? What would you do differently? Right. And I feel like if you just spend some time with that and distance yourself a little bit from the reflux of I have a bad job, my job sucks, blah, 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 then you can really find some light and some direction on where you should go. And as soon as you land, I really feel so strongly about this. If you can kind of land on a picture of where you'd like to be, you will find a way to get there. Yep. I have faith in everyone listening that if that's where you are, you can get where you need to be. So it's just about creating that, like, quiet space. Yeah. If you have to go to the library, if you have to go sit in your car in a parking lot somewhere, right? Do it. Do what you need to do.
Well, thanks so much for sharing all of this. I know that we've all, I think every grown-up has been in their life at some point where they just do not like what life looks like at this moment in time. So that's something, your story is something we can all connect with. Before we say goodbye, I have a couple fun questions for you so we can get to know you a little bit better.
Yes, fun questions.
The first is, what are you loving right now?
What am I loving right now? Well, I moved in, bought a house late last year, and what I'm loving right now is that it came with a hot tub.
Oh, nice.
And I actually, I'm not selfish about it. Like I've wanted something like that in my life for so long. And I love it because I hop in there at the end of the day and it's, like you can't do anything else because it's wet. You can't be on your phone. I can't be on the iPad playing a game. Mm-hmm. And so you can't do anything. So it's just a great, like, kind of reset. And then I sleep like a baby. So
yeah,
that's what I'm loving.
That's great. What is your favorite meal or food type treat?
Well, I like to bake. I'm a big baker. My mom had a kind of baking business on the side when I was a kid. So
okay.
I'm a big baker. So the scones for sure. Like Marionberry is the berry from Oregon. So like a Marionberry scone.
Okay.
Yum, yum. Or coming up, we'll be into strawberry shortcake weather.
Yeah.
And I tell you, Becky, my shortcakes are better than everybody else's.
Oh, why are you on the West Coast then? That's awesome. I was baking. I love to bake too. And so today I am having some friends over this evening, and I was making a devil's food cake hazelnut crunch cake. So it's devil's food with then like a chocolate buttercream and this hazelnut crunch stuff on top. And I don't know what happened, but the batter like exploded in the oven. I opened up the oven, and I don't have, like, not to brag, but I don't have baking failures very often. And this, I'm going to have to make it into a trifle instead, because there's no way that this cake is going to layer up at all. It's just, it's
well, I can think of worse things than a trifle.
Yeah, right. It's still delicious. So, anyways.
To have.
What are you doing to take care of yourself?
I just started this year a Pilates practice. I'll actually go this afternoon. And it's amazing. I have always liked yoga, but there's something about Pilates that is just strangely fascinating that I can't enunciate. It's just, I just really like how I feel afterwards. It's just, it's kind of cerebral, but it's also physical. It's just, there's something about it that really, it's really good. So if you, and I will say too, I fully admit when I walked in there and I just felt so uncomfortable. Like, I don't know what's about to happen. These machines look scary. I'm a tall guy. It looks like I might hurt something. But so you have to find someone who will kind of guide you in.
Yeah, it can totally be weird and scary at first. And when I was in high school, I would babysit, and the woman who I babysat for was a personal trainer and Pilates instructor. So she would trade me personal Pilates classes for babysitting. And
oh, nice.
That was
do you still do it?
The best. Not at the moment, because my abs are still kind of growing back together after my daughter's pregnancy with my daughter. But once that's all taken care of, I'll get back to it. So, all right. The last question is, what are you doing to be brave?
What am I doing to be brave? Well, I think the main thing for me is putting myself out there, showing up in places like this with you, having stories. I've been really inspired lately by Brene Brown and her journey. I saw her. I actually have not seen her TED Talk, but I saw her speak live, and she totally fired me up. And that was a couple of years ago, and I've just really been inspired by her and her latest book, Rising Strong, which I really recommend.
Yeah, I haven't read it yet, but it looks amazing.
It's the best so far from her. It's really, it's magic.
Yeah.
So I really have been inspired by her to be, she talks about people being in the ring, in the line of fire out there. Mm-hmm. So I really just trying to show up, and be seen and say, this is what's I've been through. This is what I've learned. This is what I stand for. This is how I feel. And I feel like by doing that, it's bringing a lot of people and things in that are of like mind. And that's a really good thing. That helps me stay there and stay brave and strong and be seen. Mm-hmm. And it's like a kind of a cycle, kind of, it brings in good, and then the good makes you feel good, which allows you to bring in even more good stuff. So.
Make sure you subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. While you're there, please rate, review, and share Stories of Unfolding Grace. When you give it 5 stars, it goes a huge way in helping other people find the podcasts by increasing my ranking. If you're interested in sharing your own story of unfolding grace, head to my blog, beckylmccoy.com/submissions. I can't wait to hear from you. Next week, I'll be talking with Robin Chapman about her miscarriage. She's talking about miscarriage, but the things that she has to share are really wonderful words of wisdom for anyone who has grieved a loss or has struggled with depression. So you're really going to want to hear what she has to say, because it was really, really encouraging. Thanks again for joining me. I'm looking forward to next week.